haven't talked about my thoughts on Diablo 4, and I'm gonna try and do that in this video. Bear with me, it's the first time I'm doing this type of video. I'll continue to do them, and maybe I'll get better over time. Okay, first of all, I've leveled a Druid to level 100 on the Eternal Realm on release, and I've leveled a Necro to a level 100 on Season 2, an Infinimist Necro. Let's start talking about Season 2 first, and then I'll go over my thoughts of the game in general after that. Season 2, Season of Blood. A great season that came with a lot of good fixes to the base game as well. There aren't too much to talk about season content-wise. I think most of the changes and additions have been to the base game. The season is good, it's great even. I think the Green Helltide thing, the Blood Harvest, is great. I leveled up in that to level 70 or something, and I had a great time all the way through, doing all the events that you could activate inside the area, opening the chests. It's just good fun, and a lot of mob density made it much more of a fun experience to level up a new character compared to what it felt like in the Eternal Realm. The vampiric abilities are awesome. Most of them makes a lot of the builds that already exist in the game better, and there's too many of them that you can pick to make the build better, so you have to make a choice. And making choices is good. In my opinion, that's what I think. As long as the choice you make is good and the other choice is also good, but you have to skip out on something. Maybe there are some builds that it's really obvious which abilities you should pick, but I felt like I want to use this, and this, and it's like, oh, I'm missing out on two, so I have to not pick two of them, and that made it more fun, and I could play around with it depending on my gear. So, oh, I need more defensive, then I just swapped the vampiric ability to a more defensive one, or I switched over to a more offensive vampiric ability. It's just, it was very good. There's one thing that was bad with the vampiric abilities, and it was how you applied the experience to it. If you had a few of the things you used to apply the experience to the skills, it felt fine. But if you have saved up to like 5,000 and wanted to apply all of them, it was just a repetitive thing. You just had to click, 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 click. It just felt stupid to do it. So please don't do that again. Implement something so that we can apply everything quickly if we want to, and that would be fixed. And to the worst part about the season, it's not a permanent thing in the game. They've added choice and also use development time to build things, and then they remove it. They need to not do that. They need to add choice and different things to do, which is essentially choice too. So if they just add more ways to play the game will be better for more people. Maybe this season can't be permanently applied to the base game. In the future, they really need to try and make seasons that can stay in the game, build on the game instead of just placing a brick, waiting for 3 months, then remove the brick. Like, place a brick, keep it there, place another brick. Oh, the brick is faulty. Remove the brick, fix the brick, apply the brick again, and then try and build this building that they call D4. And if they do that, the game will be much better in the end for everyone. Apparently there was a lot to talk about in Season 2, but now let's get into what I think about the base game of D4. I feel the game is a 4.5 or 5 out of 10. It's just very mid. It's not a great game, it's just presented very nicely, and that I think is the strongest part about the game. The base game is really good. What I mean about the base game is the graphics engine, which includes like the animations and the feel on how you play the game. That is great. I think it beats most of the action RPGs out there currently. The problem arrives when you look at the things that are placed on top of the base game, which is essentially the game, like the itemization, skill tree, and the Paragon Board. I think all of them are made in a very strange way. Let's start with itemization to keep it like neat. Let's talk about the items first. Okay, so we'll play action RPGs to find items and find interesting items. The rares in Diablo 4 aren't interesting. You're looking for essentially the same thing on all the gear. Now, it's a bit more interesting because they've fixed resists, so you need to cap your resists in different ways. So it's added a bit of depth and choice to to the gearing, but essentially you almost need the same things on every build. And also it's an added layer of confusion on top of this, which also makes no sense for me in my head. They've added all these stats like the core, basic, trap, brawling, and all the skill tree things, damage, physical, fire, cold, shadow, lightning, poison damage, damage to close enemies, damage to distant enemies, damage to crowd controlled enemies, slowed, stunned, bleeding, damage to elites, damage to healthy, damage to injured, damage while healthy, fortified, damage while berserking, and all of these things are essentially the same thing. They get treated and put into the same basket when the damage calculation is. You don't need all of these stats. It's like 50 different stats that do the same thing. Of course, some of these things have conditions that need to be fulfilled to apply the damage, but it's just annoying, and it's cluttering up the stats on items. So it makes it's a simple system that is confusing and a bit obscure at the same time. So it feels like they don't know who they're trying to target. If they try to target like the more casual player, why not make it a bit more simple? Add a few of these mechanics like damage to stunned enemies, but then make that a multiplier so you actually feel like you're doing a lot more damage when you succeed on stunning an enemy. Maybe make it harder to stun the enemy and make it harder to fulfill these conditions, but then you really feel it when it happens. Now it's just a clutter, and it's annoying, confusing, hard to read. Like, that's another thing. Take a look at this item. One of the lines are 15.0 bracket, then a percentage. Why is the format of the item this way? They should fix this. This is like Roblox level, 15-year-old making a game at home level bad. There's no reason for this like development team to not have fixed this. It shouldn't have been this more than in like a early stage. The game is items. It needs to be easy to read the items and understand what's going on the item. Now it's just random numbers on lines, bracket. The line break happens at like very strange places on the lines where you try and read. At some point when I played, I stopped looking at gear because I had good enough gear, and I have a good pair of pants. I'm not gonna read pants anymore because it's very annoying. Camera, hello. It's very hard on the eyes for me, at least. Maybe I'm just old, but it gets annoying to read these things and very hard to read them for no reason. Just fix it. Then we have the aspects, which also ruins the itemization. Because you play, you find an aspect, you apply it you find an aspect on an item, so you break the item down, get the aspect, apply it to an item. Then the aspect you have found is locked to that item, and you can't extract it again. So you need to find the aspect again. What happens is you have a lot of items or aspects, it depends on how you store them, just laying around, just in case that you find a better item to upgrade to. This is also a thing that needs to be fixed. I think they should make it so all the aspects you extract gives XP towards that aspect which you have in your aspect book, or whatever you call it, your aspect collection. And every time you extract an aspect, you get a little bit of XP towards that aspect, and maybe you can level it up a little bit, so you don't have to save all the aspects in your stash or on your character. You should probably not be able to level up the aspect to max. Maybe stop at 80 or 70%, and then there's a reason to save those really high aspects in your stash, so it's a bit of a hit to your stash space if you want to save the really high rolls. But you can still continue playing with the aspects that aren't in your book from the dungeons. So every aspect you extract gives you the aspect, and then every extraction after that increases like the level of it or something like that. That would be a solution. Enough rambling about items. You get the point. I could ramble on and say the same thing 10 times. Let's move on. The skill tree. This is a personal preference. I think it's boring. There's not enough options, and for me it should be more skills for every class. It feels a bit... It's called a skill tree, but for me it feels like a skill twig. It is fine, but it's very underwhelming for me. It's just a personal preference here. No objective wrong. The same goes for the items as well, I guess. But I feel the items are more actually objectively bad. The skill tree, it's a personal preference. I think it's boring. Even if I'm not a build maker, when I follow build guides, it feels like really thin. It doesn't feel like cool interactions going on. It feels very simple. Again, a personal preference. Let's move on to the Paragon Board. Okay, so here we are at the Paragon Board. It looks cool. It looks very complex and everything. But I'm just gonna zoom in and give you one typical thing that I think you can see it. When you see it, it's hard to not see it. I hope you've seen it. Which way you take here, you get the same stats. So if I go up here, I get strength, willpower, int, and int. If I go this way, I get strength, willpower, int, and int. If I go this way, I get strength, willpower, int, and int. So this here does nothing. You could remove these two here. It gives an illusion of being complex, but it just makes it confusing and hard to come up with the best optimal path, but just in an annoying way, not in a like, oh, cool, I found this. This is perfect. You could have this more like this, like you have two paths you can take, and then you go into the path, and maybe you can connect the paths at some different points on the board. But it's just so uninteresting and unnecessarily confusing and obscure here too. It just feels confusing, fake complexity. Yeah, I don't enjoy this as much as I thought I would, because of the, like, it feels not like genuinely interesting. It feels like they're trying to make it interesting because they're trying to find the overturned window or whatever it's called, where we want it to be, instead of just making it interesting from their perspective. But maybe they're creatively bankrupt, so they can't come up with ideas, and the only thing they do is listen and try and find out what we want, which is good, but also really bad, because you have no direction on where you want to go when you make your own game. It's not... I'm not the one making the game. I just want an interesting game to play. And this is not interesting. This just feels like they're catering to the, oh, it's gonna be complex, but we're trying to make it simple, so it's just falls flat, and it's none of it. None of it. It's not simple, and it's not complex enough to be interesting. And the complexity is just annoying. The same as with items. And then we have, we'll look at skill tree really quick. It's just so thin. It doesn't feel interesting. If there was like maybe 3 options and then 2 options on those 3, that would be cool. And maybe we could put more points in here to scale them up higher. But then they need to rebalance everything, which is maybe not the best thing. But all the things I've talked about here are on top of the base game. As I said in the beginning, the base game for me is the graphics, how the game feels to play, and animations and all that. And then these things that I've talked about after that is on top of that. And that needs to change completely. I think they need to remake everything. Either go simpler or go like Path of Exile. Maybe not all the way out Path of Exile, but closer to Path of Exile. But I think this game could be a lot better if they go simpler. Like, I played Genshin Impact. The itemization system in that game is so simple, but still interesting in a way. You're searching for very specific stats, but it's not obscure. There's not like 10 different things, but they have different conditions that needs to be met for them to increase your damage. If there is a condition on those items, it's a part of like a set, and when you fulfill the requirement on the set, your damage goes up significantly. So it makes it interesting when you unlock the potential of the item by finding ways of reaching the condition that the item requires. They could do the same in this game with items, with skills, but I feel they need to start over from the beginning and just decide where they want to go, simple or advanced. Now they're none of it. It's just confusing. It's like they're trying to play a part that they think we want them to play. Okay, there we have it. I gave it a shot. I tried to express my opinions on the game. I feel like I came like halfway. I'm rambling a lot and not getting to the point quick enough. But this is the video. If you enjoyed it, subscribe, like, and comment for support. I'll see you guys in the next video, I guess. Bye for now.